Hello and good afternoon. We are here in another PentaBAR, if it's usually the Wednesday at noon. And we're treating today a very interesting subject, which is web automation. And we'll look what's that about. The commonly used robot framework, it's a key-driven test automation solutions that empowers testers, to be more efficient and complex and manage the complex workflow scripts. But, what tool to choose may be a bigger discussion. So today we'll address this discussion between Selenium and Playwright. And for that, we'll have with us Liviu Avram, who is an experienced QA passionate about automation testing and robot frameworks. He's playing with Playwright since 2015, and besides web automation, he's also doing mobile and APIs. And he is a project manager, as I said, also in Pentalog Brașov. He's always ready to take new challenges, as is this one. And share his knowledge with others. That's why he also created a YouTube channel that you can follow, and he'll share about it. Welcome, Liviu. How are you?
Hello, Mihai. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Fine. I'm in a new environment. In my office is today. I find another office here. I'll play with the light later on. And how is the coding lately?
Well, the code lately, it's a bit hard because there are so many solutions on the market when it comes to automation, and we also have always have new challenges in what tools to use, what approaches to use, and sometimes this is difficult because if you start an automation project on the right path, it will lead to a successful project. If you don't, you will have a lot of time later on for fixing and redoing everything. So it's very important the way you start up.
As I know you, this will be an interactive presentation, a very well structured one. So I want to invite everybody to ask questions. We'll receive them in the Q&A channel, and I'll address Liviu on the appropriate time or when we feel it, and then we'll have a space also at the end. But don't wait for the end, as the subject is getting unfolded. You can address your questions and make this a conversation about what's relevant. But before getting there, you have also some greetings there. Before getting there, why is this an important conversation? Playwright and Selenium.
Well, we see a lot of projects that are developed in few years' time, and sometimes we don't take the time to investigate new opportunities. We only rely on something we already know. And if you've seen that picture on the web with those guys who are having square wheels on a vehicle, and somebody comes, not having time to improve. So this is all about understanding that we must take new challenges into consideration, and we must look into new tools each time we try to do something, because sometimes the new tools help us to easily manage the same workflow. And today's topic is this: Selenium versus Playwright. Playwright is a big player in the web automation world. It has been used for many years. It has been updated-ish. It's somehow easy to use if you know what you are doing. But why not investigating things that can make your automation projects faster, more reliable, and more easy to use?
So let's see what you've prepared for today. We had a brilliant discussion while preparing this. I cannot wait to see what's that about.
Yes, let me just share my screen.
And for all the others, while you're doing that, we'll also have a simulation at the end. But
yes, I am always about theory, but then also for practical things. I cannot speak for hours about the subject, and in the end, everybody will wonder, well, how does it work? So my way of teaching is I explain the basics, I show you the theory, and in the end, I'm showing you exactly how it works. So in the end, it's up to you if you want to further use it or not in your projects.
Okay.
I shared my screen. I hope it's okay for everybody.
Perfect. We can see.
Okay. First of all, hello to all the colleagues that have joined this wonderful presentation. I'm very confident that by the end of it, you will have some good knowledge about whether to choose Selenium or anything else for your automation project. But first of all, let me just start off by introducing myself and give you a few more details about myself so you can have an ready idea about who I am and what I do. So as Mihai said, I'm in Pentalog for almost 14 years now. I have a 9 years experience in QA and 6 years experience in automation. I've only used robot framework to automate on web, mobile, desktop, APIs, and so on. So I chose this path because at the time I was too lazy to actually learn a programming language and create an automation framework with Java or Python or C#. But I discovered along the way that robot framework is an excellent tool, and even if it's open source, it is greatly maintained, and it has a big community that is working nonstop to make it better. I also have a 5 years experience as a help desk level 1, in which I played around with operating systems, networks, and software. And for the last 3 years, I'm also a project manager or a Scrum Master in Pentalog, and I manage exclusively a team of QA engineers. We are doing both manual and automated QA. So this is kind of my field of expertise. And in this page, I wanted also to show you that you can reach me at any time if you have questions about automation methodologies or specific automation problems with robot framework. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can send me an email on Twitter. You can also find me on YouTube, where I created a tutorials channel for robot framework that is called Robot Framework Tips, Tricks, and Tutorials. And if you look on YouTube, you will see the exact logo. The idea behind it was that I wanted for people who want to start automating but don't really know how and where to start, to have a pretty basic idea about something that is easy to use and does not require any coding language to be considered. So I encourage you to subscribe to my channel, and you will see new videos posted on there.
Why did you do this in the first place, the channel?
Well, back in 2015, when I had to start automation, Robot Framework was presented as the tool of choice. And I did not have any experience in automation. I didn't know where to start, where to finish. And I've spent weeks, months investigating, looking for tutorials online, searching for answers to questions on Stack Overflow. Of course, everybody knows Stack Overflow. And I have spent hours, weeks, months doing this. And it was a very, very hard process. And once I started developing the automation projects, it worked for a while, but I did not implement the best solutions I could. So in the end, when something changed in the projects, I found myself obligated to start from the beginning or to refactor a big part of the projects, and this took even more time. So I wanted to offer people the possibility to learn directly as they should from the start, the easy way. I try to answer as many questions as I can, and I try to make people fall in love with Robot Framework because it is a very wonderful tool. And also, I think Robot Framework is somehow underrated. There are few people that know about it, and that's a shame. So this is why I started the channel. I wanted everybody to have a good experience in learning Robot Framework.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, so on to today's subject. What is Playwright? It is a open source JavaScript automation library from Node.js, and it provides a single API to developers and testers to automate their web application across today's major browser engines. So that is Chromium, which include Chrome and the new Edge platform from Microsoft, Firefox, and WebKit. Now, we know that WebKit and Safari are a bit difficult to automate on other platforms other than Mac OS, so Windows and Linux, and it requires installing third-party stuff, so it's been complicated from the beginning. But Playwright introduces a much easier way to do that, and we will discuss it during this session. Initially, this Playwright project belonged to Google, and I think 2 years ago, the initial team was stolen by Microsoft. So they took the project and they took also the team that was developing it, and they started to, they continued actually the project, but with a new vision. They wanted to introduce an automation solution that is reliable enough to execute the needs of the modern web. And those needs are automating websites that are more and more complex, that use more and more third-party components that make other solutions fail when they shouldn't. You may also recognize the name Puppeteer. This is the actual name, the old name that was used when Google was developing this library. So Playwright is designed for end-to-end testing, and it is designed with the idea of developers and testers in mind. What they did in the beginning was to obtain answers from the development team and see what the challenges were in automation scenarios. And they discovered that one of the challenges with Selenium was that you had to install multiple stuff. So you make your environment functional. You had to install multiple stuff if you were using Dockers and so on. So they wanted to take all of this solution and all of the prerequisites and put them in one single package, and to be able to install it no matter the operating system you are running on. So no more separated web drivers to install on a certain computer, no more separate versions of drivers and browsers and so on. So they try to simplify this a lot. And after seeing what Playwright is, the normal question to ask is, why should you choose Playwright? Well, it has been proven that this enables fast, reliable, and capable automation process across modern browsers, like we discussed before. And it differentiates itself to Selenium by a few key points. So the support for browsers is one of them, and it's one of the most important. It's fast and reliable in execution. It is actually, in some cases, 2 times faster than Selenium, and we will have the opportunity to see that once we get to the demo. It has very powerful automation capabilities because it allows you to better control your browser than Selenium, and it integrates easily in your workflow either by installing it on a system with all the prerequisites you need, or by using it with a Docker, for example. So here we have a list of the discussed features. So the covering for all the browsers here, I sensed that I had to enumerate them once again because they are very important. And as I said, Apple Safari was a bit difficult to automate on Windows and Linux, but thanks to this technology, now that is no longer the case. You can also think about automating mobile browsers. For the time being, they have not fully developed this functionality. I'm talking on the robot framework side. But what you can do actually in your test cases is once you open up a browser, you can set it to a certain resolution, and that will somehow mimic the behavior of the actual mobile browser. I think that in the future, they are planning to be able to automate also native browsers on devices, but that will come later. One of the other big advantages when it comes to browser support is the possibility to run the automation scripts on a headless mode, but with full JavaScript support. Those who have used Selenium, you know that when you are trying to run Selenium in headless mode, if a website contains JavaScript or other third-party components, it is difficult to automate, and sometimes it cannot do it because Selenium cannot emulate this part while starting the browser in headless mode. And this is where the speed and the stability comes from with Playwright, because it enables you to automate everything in headless mode without any type of error and any type of problem. I hope I'm not going too fast. I'm somehow excited about all this.
crystal clear, but that keeps me, great so far, as they're also saying. But if there are questions, keep them coming, and we'll address them. Go ahead.
Okay. Because we talked about fast and reliable execution, I will present you a few let's say, reasons why that is happening. So one major difference between Playwright and Selenium is that Playwright does a better interaction with your web browser. And when it executes automatic test cases, it automatically waits for elements to be ready. Those who have used Selenium to automate something know that the normal flow in Selenium is to do an action like a click or an input, and then wait for the element on the next page to be available and click on that element and so on. So it's a matter of doing something, waiting, doing another thing, waiting, and so on. And sometimes with websites that have a complex DOM structure, we have noticed that Selenium crashes because during the times that when the page is unstable, it tries to mimic an action. That action fails, and then the whole test fails. So with Playwright, this is no longer the issue, because it does the preliminary verification for elements to be ready, and once they are visible and active, only then Playwright does the required action. So you are no longer putting waits inside your test cases. And then you have timeout-free automation, because Playwright is doing a better job in communicating with your browser and communicating with the dev tools inside your browser. Not only Playwright inspects the HTML or the front end of your website, it is also watching the backend and the network requests that are being sent, and the actions that it's doing are when everything is stable. And then we have parallelization with browser contexts. We will discuss. But the idea is that unlike Selenium, where if you want to parallelize things, you must open as many browsers as you need, with Playwright, you can use a single browser with multiple contexts and do the same thing. Okay? Yeah?
Sounds good, yeah.
Yeah. So this is just something that we already discussed about advantages. What worth mentioning here, besides the fact that Playwright is also intercepting the requests that are being transmitted between your browser and the server in real time. So it can be used for automating the front end and the back end also. It gives you better control over your browser by shadow piercing selectors, using geolocation, allowing you to have different permissions and so on. And it also manages well the part where you download, upload files, and all type of input events. And it even supports dark mode. So if you want to automate your application on light and dark mode, you can also do that. Now, everything on paper sounds wonderful. And the normal question is, well, how do you install it? Do I need to spend 2-3 weeks to make this work, or how does it work? Well, actually, this is not the case. All you need to implement this solution for Robot Framework is to have an operating system like macOS, Linux, or Windows with Python already installed, with Node, and all you have to do to install it is to use the npm package manager, and you install it with npm install Playwright. Or if you want, you can install it directly with pip. You just install it with pip install Playwright or browser, was it? It's in the next slide anyway. So this is the general documentation. It's for those who maybe want to use Playwright with other languages like Python, C# or Java. You just install it directly with the Node package manager, and then you can continue with your work.
So the reactions are not waiting anymore. Sometimes some people are saying that they're ditching Selenium just for this.
And you haven't seen the best part yet.
Yeah, okay, so stay tuned to that. And Narcis is saying that Playwright works headless, no browser open, works on no graphical Linux environment.
Yes, that is a very good question. And I know it works inside Dockers. So I'm guessing it does work in a non-graphic Linux environment. Unfortunately, I do not have the answer to that question. But I will give you a link to the Playwright homepage, and they have a pretty good documentation there, and you can find everything you need.
And then another question is that if it can be manipulated from Java or Python like Selenium, and maybe you will answer that later.
Yes, it can be. And there's also the documentation part on the official website that can give you all the details about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we generally talked about Playwright and how to install it and how to use it, but now it's time to get down to the main framework we are trying to discuss about, and that is Robot Framework. So the developers from Robot Framework have started doing a proof of concept with Playwright in last year. So after the pandemic started, and they did this for about a month to see if there is this possibility to create a library that will implement the Playwright principle for Robot Framework. And actually what they discovered was that it is possible. And if you know Robot Framework and you have done web automation with Robot Framework, you know that there is a Selenium library that is used today to automate web apps, and its name is Selenium Library. And the same team that developed this library got into developing the Playwright library. They wanted to do something completely new, so they named their library Browser. So now we have Selenium library and Browser library. And in order to install that for Robot Framework, all you need is Python with pip, and then you can use this command in the terminal, pip install Robot Framework Browser. This will download the required package from pip, but then you should only initialize this. And what does initializing mean? It means that once you have downloaded the core package, this rf browser init command will download all the prerequisites that you need in order to start your automation project right away. In other words, for those who use Selenium, you know that before you can actually automate something, or you can start the browser with any language, you must download and install your browser, download and install Selenium, download and install, download your web drivers, make the connection between all of this, and only then you are able to launch your automatic test. And the cool thing about this browser library is that after its initialization, it creates a packed environment. It's somehow like a Docker environment where you have all your browsers or your web drivers and all the bits you need to actually start automation. So you have nothing else to download from this point on. You may not even need to install the initial browsers on your system to begin with. Okay, so this is very cool, and this is how developers and testers get to have the same environment while they try to use the automation features. And last things about the theory are those related to browsers, contexts, and pages. So I said before that, for example, if you have, a chat application, and you want to automate the process of sending messages between two people, if you want to do that with Selenium, you would open up the first browser, you would log in with the first user, you would open up a second browser and log in with the second user, and then you would be able to start interacting with them. And opening browsers inside your operating system takes time and it takes resources. So the guys from Robot Framework have developed the method from Playwright to use browser contexts. So what is a browser context? Basically, let me just do a quick demo here. Okay, so now I have a blank Google Chrome browser, and a context is if I open up a new private window or incognito window. This is actually what a context is. And all the tabs that are composing this private session are individual pages. So if I want to open up a new context, I would go here and I would open another incognito window, and all the tabs would refer to the same context. So you can see the difference that with Playwright, you open the browser once, but you use multiple contexts to actually execute your test cases. So if we get into the example I gave earlier, you open up your browser once, and then you would have a context for the case where you go into the application and you log in with the first user, and a second context when you want to log in with the second user.
Yeah, if that is important to share the screen also, Liviu, I think that's in the window. Your presentation is still on the screen, not the browser.
Oh.
So
how about now?
Unshare it. Now it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So you did not see anything I showed you?
No, we just heard you.
Okay. So let me just quickly redo that. So this is the browser. A new incognito window would be a context, and then all the tabs that are contained here are pages that belong to the same context. And then if I open up another incognito window and some other tabs, those will be a different context with different pages. Okay. Right. So back to the presentation. Is it Is it on the screen? Yeah. Okay. So not being forced to open up multiple browsers saves time. And this is one of the reasons why Playwright is so much faster than Selenium, because it allows you to make these isolated environments in which you can play around. So I also made a quick graphical explanation that includes what I just presented. So you have the browser, you have the context, like being a, let's say, isolated environment, and then you have the page. And on the right, you can see one browser with multiple contexts and multiple pages that belong to the same context or to different contexts. And the last slide is documentation about where you can find information about the browser library and important stuff that you may want to see before actually taking the decision of whether to start automating with Playwright or not. So first we have the robotframeworkbrowser.org, which is the website used for robot framework. Then you have the link for the browser library, which I will be sharing in a minute. Keywords documentation, and the last link is actually a video I did on my YouTube channel, in which I am having a 1-hour conversation with one of the main developers of the browser library, who is called Mikko Korpela. He comes from Finland, and he talks about some very interesting stuff that they have been implementing for the browser library so far. So be sure to check that.
Great. So just before going towards the simulation, we have another question I mentioned. Can we do tests in a benchmark-like fashion to test low time of resources? You know, images.
Yes, the tests can be as complex as you want. If you use robot framework and you want to automate something, it all depends on the library you are going to use. For time, you have the time library that is already included in robot framework, and you can actually get the timestamp right before making an action, make the action, get the timestamp at the end of the action, and then make the difference between the two. So you don't actually need Playwright for that. You can do it for any other type of automation that you want to do. Okay, now let me share my other screen. So Do you see my my browser?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So very brief. This is the Playwright official website. It's playwright.dev. And here, as I said, in the documentation, you have a lot of things that are being explained, and you have the opportunity to read about them in your favorite programming language. Then on the robot framework browser.org, it's actually the main website of the robot framework, and this section is dedicated to Playwright and a few information about this. And then we have the browser library. And if you have used robot framework before, and if you have used Selenium library, you know that this is kind of the, let's say, standard format for displaying libraries in robot framework. And this is, Mihai, this is what you were saying at the beginning of our meeting, the fact that robot framework uses a very simple syntax to create test cases. So as you can see, all the keywords are in plain text, so you don't have to go through the hustle of actually using another programming language just to get some things done. Okay, now let's do a short demo. And then if you have other questions, I will be glad to answer them. So the demo I prepared today is a demo for the same test case. Now, for those of you who who know automation, I want you to know that the locators that you are seeing inside the test case are deliberately there. I have not used variables or other formulas for a reason. I wanted you to directly see what elements are targeted, and I did not use any fancy keywords and so on. So basically what the test will do is to go to Amazon.com. It will type Samsung Galaxy S21. It will search for this. It will take the name of the first phone that it finds. It will open up the page. It will verify the price. It will add it to cart, and then it will go to the cart and verify that indeed the price that is displayed inside the cart is identical to the one that was on a previous page. So basically, this is a test case that is likely to appear on a real case scenario. So we have first the Chrome Selenium approach. We have then the Chrome and Playwright approach. It's the same thing, but with the different keywords that compose the Playwright library. And then we have the Firefox with Selenium and Firefox with Playwright. So the two tests with Selenium will be with the live browser, while the ones with Playwright will be with the headless browser. So let's see how they work, and let's see a comparison. The first test is the test in which Selenium with Chrome tries to execute it. And that was the execution. Now on Playwright with Chrome, we will not see the actual browser because it will be headless. And that's the end of it. Now Firefox with Selenium will do the same thing. This is the good thing about automation. Once you have written your test case, you can sit back and watch the tools as they do the job for you.
Love the job. It works with popcorn.
Yes, but that's how you get fat. Okay.
Not the case in your situation.
Yeah, I'm only from the chest up. Okay, so this was the execution. Now, let us go ahead and analyze the results. Now, bear in mind, this is a very simple test case, and there are not a lot of actions that have been involved into this test case. But what you can see from the beginning is that Selenium took 12 seconds to execute. Playwright with Chrome took 7 seconds. And then Firefox with Selenium took 17, almost 18 seconds for the same test case, while Playwright with Firefox took 11 seconds. And I know what you are thinking right now is that maybe this is not a fair fight because Playwright was running headless while Selenium was not. So let's make it a fair fight. I will modify the name of the browsers for Selenium in headless Chrome and headless Firefox. And now we should be able to see the execution running headlessly for all the components. And one of the things you will notice is that on the Selenium side, you get these warnings related to JavaScript because, as I said, Selenium does a very poor job in managing websites that are using too much JavaScript or other fancy third-party components. We will just wait for the execution to finish. And then we will analyze the results again. Okay, so last time we had 12, 7, 17, 11. Now we have 12, 7, 16, and 11. So as you can see, the fact that we run the tests on headless mode also with Selenium did not bring any advantage. If we expand the execution log, we can see that even for opening the browser in headless mode, Selenium took 2.5 seconds, and then it took a while to identify the next elements and do the clicks. And for Playwright, the new browser, so just opening the browser took 324 milliseconds, and then loading the page was 1 second and 1.6 seconds. So there's a huge difference between starting the browser with Selenium and starting the browser with Playwright. And then the identification of the elements is much shorter with Playwright. Of course, while you're doing your tests, you have the opportunity to also run your tests in not in the headless mode. So let's maybe try and show that. Let me see, because I don't know all the commands. I have just started this. So let's go ahead and only run the Chrome test with headless false. So that would be 02 Chrome Playwright robot. And now you can see the Playwright also running the tests in a physical browser, and it's almost as quick as the other one. So last time we had 7 seconds, and now we had 6 seconds. It also depends on the time it takes for the page to load or to search for items and so on. So this was the demo, and while looking at the tests I wrote, I remembered something very important that I forgot to mention when I was talking about advantages of Playwright over Selenium. Playwright introduces the opportunity to simplify your web locators, because in Selenium, when you want to identify a web locator, you can use XPath, ID, CSS, and you can only use one. And we know that the downside of CSS, for example, is that you cannot target the text inside a web element. And if you look at this line here, what you see is that for the same element, I managed to combine the CSS and an XPath. So when writing a locator for an element in Playwright, you can actually use combinations like this. And myself included, I never saw something like this done before. If we look at the Selenium side, we see that there's only one XPath. But here I have the opportunity to use CSS combined with XPath. And if I want to, I can also combine it with an ID. So writing selectors for your web locators will be much easier and simpler to control than using Selenium. And one last thing I want to show you is if we check the script with Selenium, we see that we had those actions and waits and actions and waits and actions and waits and so on. While on the Playwright side, there is actually no wait during the action. So we have the click, and then we immediately have the get text for the element that is being displayed after the click and after the page loads. So this is basically it. I don't know if I sold it or not, but in a 1 hour time, this is the short version and the short presentation of Selenium versus Playwright. Keep in mind that the browser library for Robot Framework and the Playwright library itself is still being developed and maintained. And this will have many new features in the future versions. And yeah, it's going on a good path.
Thank you very much, Liviu. It's now we have some more space for questions if there are.
Yes.
It has already one of them, so please keep them coming. Does Playwright support to handle CAPTCHA?
Honestly, I don't know. I did not yet start to play with it on a big scale level when it comes to my own projects. I only did a few proof of concepts, and the results are astonishing. But I did not have the need to use the CAPTCHA.
Okay. If there's any other questions, apparently by now the advantages are there. How can we receive materials and links? So I think if you subscribe, my colleagues just put there, you'll have the video there, and we can fetch some giveaways if you subscribe to the PentaBARs.
Yeah, and I can also get the list of emails that have been registered for this session, and I can send the presentation to everybody. That is not a problem.
Taking advantage of that, and now my colleagues have put the links, so you can subscribe and see other PentaBARs and see whatever is interesting for you there, and also that means staying in contact. Another question is, what is the difference between the Playwright await and one implemented by us and the options offered by Selenium to implement await?
Well, think about it like this. In Selenium, if you do not use the waits, as soon as you, I don't know, clicked on a button and you try to make an action on an element that is not yet displayed on the page, Selenium will try to look for that element as soon as you have clicked the button. So if the loading of the page takes a few seconds, if you actually use a syntax like this, where you do the action and then you try to do something for an element that will be displayed in a few seconds, your test will fail, because Selenium needs these type of keywords in order to successfully run. So you do the action, then you wait for the next element, and only after this keyword has succeeded, you can actually interact with it. Playwright, on the other hand, has a built-in timeout mechanism that allows it to keep this next command in line just until this element is being displayed on the page. And by default, that timeout is about 10 seconds. So if we take a rough case scenario, you click on button A and you wait for a text to appear, and that text will appear in about, I don't know, 5 seconds. If you do not implement the wait with Selenium, the test will fail and it will tell you that the text did not appear. If you do it with Playwright, you will click the button A, and in a time of 10 seconds maximum, it will wait for that text to be displayed on the page. And if that text is displayed in about 5 seconds, it will know how to interact with it and click it or whatever. I hope I I answered this.
I also do. Please react if you have more. Edit is asking, can you configure the wait time in Playwright?
Yes. Sometimes you do an action and you want to check that on the next page or in the next second something good happened, like the text that should appear on the page or something like that. And in order to do that, in Selenium, you use the wait until page contains element. In Playwright, there is something called wait for. No, it's it's something with element. Highlight, wait for element state. And this gives you more room to play with than Selenium, because it allows you to define what is the state of the element that you want to wait for. Do you want it to be visible? Do you want it to be active? Do you want it to be how? So if you use out of the box wait for element state and you only provide the selector, is the same thing as saying in Selenium library, wait until page contains element and giving the selector.
There's also a question, and can you use automation Playwright for CAD software testing? I don't know if that's something that you've experienced with.
I don't know. I don't know. You could go back to the documentation and forums, and I'm sure you can find the answer. Or if not, you can always post your question on the Playwright website.
Can the default timeout be changed?
Yes, anything can be changed. So if we type in timeout, you can see here the set browser timeout keyword that will change this, and also retry assertion for timeout. So basically you can play around with them and you can experience the power of this. But this is the like set Selenium timeout from Selenium library. This is set browser timeout. So the 10 seconds will be modified to whatever value you want.
Okay. Another question is, can you compare RAM consuming between Selenium and Playwright?
Well, I'm guessing that depends on the test case, that depends on the operating system and so on. I did not do it, but the developer that is actually developing this browser library told me that the consumption was much lower, because you have this enclosed environment in which all the browsers start headless, so you do not use video memory to process the websites. But I cannot give an exact number. You can take a test case, write it in Playwright and Selenium. I'm sure it will be a difference between them, but I don't know at what extent. I did not measure it.
And what is the maximum web context for Playwright, context the Playwright can support?
Well, get your RAM divided by I don't know what, and as long as your system supports 100 or 200 contexts, browser library should support also. So this is strictly related to the operating system.
Mm-hmm. And another question is, how does it support shadow down frameworks like Angular, if you have experience?
I don't have experience with Angular, but as far as I know, it does support them. How it does it, I don't know.
Okay. Cool. So it appears that we're almost there with our PentaBAR. No more questions. A lot of thanks. Thank you, Liviu, for everything, and thank you that you're at the forefront of testing new things and seeing how it works. If you all want to get more PentaBARs on various subjects, subscribe to that link. See you also next Wednesday. That's time I think will be in Vietnam, and we'll always have an international framework that we're working with, and great speakers to follow. Just stay close and be well. Bye.
Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye.